And then I'm basically doing nothing other than just broadcasting, so you can do your whole thing. And
Perfect. All right.
then,
Thanks,
yeah,
Scotty.
welcome. Okay. We're live on YouTube. And so for everyone, some of you already know we have John Wingate, founder and CEO of Bank Social. And with him is Michael Allen, who is a lieutenant in the Coast Guard, United States Coast Guard. But he's also involved with a lot of fintech and beyond that, they have a lot of other things going on. So they're going to do a fireside chat. So as opposed to previous sessions where I was more involved, panel or interview, this is more between those two. So go ahead and introduce yourselves, John and Michael, and I'll mostly just be silent.
All right, sounds good. So, quickly, I'm John Wingate. I'm with Bank Social. I'm the founder and CEO, and we've been up here at the Harvard campus, talking a lot about different types of use cases in fintech with AI and blockchain. Some on the verge or on the edges of that, and then some really great projects spun out of here. So we're really excited. And then Michael, go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I'm Michael Allen, and as Scotty said, I'm a lieutenant in the Coast Guard, but that's not why I'm here, and I'm not representing or speaking for the Coast Guard in any of this kind of a way. But I've known John for a few years now, and I've had a big interest in Web3, fintech, technology, and I'm ultimately going to find myself in the space when I'm headed for retirement in a couple of years. So when John reached out to me, I was happy to hop on here and be willing to speak. And then I've actually been enjoying the previous conversations that you had there, Scotty, for AI and blockchain. So it was really excellent to hear Dr. Mack and Joseph Wu on their perspectives and hearing about how kind of AI is going to accelerate innovation in many of the spaces that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, really, really cool. And then Michael, we also do a lot together. We've done the with Bank Social. We've got our DeFi with our DAO and all that. And Michael's also a delegate of that. That's a real interesting. It's kind of a new way for a corporation, for a cooperative and a corporation, and a new kind of cooperative corporation to be formed. And
Yeah.
so we're pioneering that. And the delegates are basically there's a DAO, a DAO, just to give some of that context because we are talking about new things. And that's a Wyoming DAO. It's an official LLC company. Michael, you've been here since the beginning and us doing all that. So what we want to talk about today is as you guys are finishing up here on the last couple hours, I've already had a lot of people come up to us and ask us about, more the how do you build a fintech? How do you build a company? How do you build all the way down to the brand and the values and the what goes into making a successful product. And just for an example, we had one guy who came up to us and asked, if he should, in his marketing and branding, focus on the tech or if he should focus on, what he should focus on. And it's like focus on the benefits. So we want to get into all that. Michael and I will talk back and forth, and then what we'll do is at the end we'll open it up. Michael, we may or may not be able to do the Q&A part live with you, just because you and I are offline, and I may have to do that in the at the Harvard place, and only Harvard may be able, but we may be able to. I know you're in the chat, Michael, as well. You're in the Discord. So Michael and I will both be in Discord for those who see this later and maybe have some questions or would like some feedback on brand, feedback on, naming, feedback on go-to-market strategy, economic strategy, whatever that is. This is kind of that discussion that's just beyond creating the product, now taking the product to market. Because what we want to do for the accelerator, for those who want to get into the next stage of this, which is the accelerator, we've got the opportunity to build a brand and to build a culture, a product, and wrap those all together into a successful into a successful organization. And so, Michael, with that, we'll kind of get it kicked off. We've got a couple things we want to talk about. I'll just go over it, or do you want to go over at high level the components that we talked about that we want to go over today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can kind of kick it off here. And I mean, one of the things that people, when they're going into this space of fintech or business in general, is you have to identify where are you going to start? Well, you have to be solving something or providing a service that solves a problem for people that are going to be looking for something to either solve a problem in their business or it fulfills a product need. And that's kind of where step one is identifying what is the thing that you're going to do and look at. And I actually saw something here when I was browsing on the Live AI website is the flow chart for the participant. Been looking at that. It's starting with the idea and then the concept and then the MVP or the minimum viable product. And it's where does that idea come from? And you could have that idea anywhere. You could have it from your current business that you're already in, or you could have that from brainstorming, just where you've been and your personal experiences, or in many cases in school. What kind of a project would you want to work on? So kind of say that identifying that problem is kind of where you're going to start, and then you're going to look into going forward with that with your solutions. And John, one of the biggest things that we've been seeing with the bank social and that you'll definitely speak toward is kind of where do you identify your customer then? And what kind of a business model are you going to use?
Yeah, so let's go back to identifying the problem a little bit too, because it's also can be stated as identifying the solution. So I was talking with a group over here earlier about initial coin offerings, initial token offerings, and the idea that there's a regulatory burden, there's a burden to getting. His view was that it's hard to get there, but really it's more about how are you solutioning what you're trying to bring to market. You have to think about things differently. And I'm of the belief that anything is possible, and what that means is you just have to find a path to a yes. It's a product tweak, it's a way to look at things differently. It's a reorganization. It's a new software solution. So, identifying the problems is the only that very, very tip, but really it's more about identifying the solution, right? So looking at that problem from many different angles and then creating the path that gets to the top of the mountain in the most effective and efficient ways. And there will be times where you have to cut a new path that hasn't been seen before, and there'll be times where the path is very clear and easy to traverse. And then there'll be times like we talked about with mentors and getting feedback from people and talking with people who can think about things from a different way. So that's kind of where you've got to start, and that's what we've already done here a little bit today. I think a lot of the teams did a really fantastic job of reaching out, asking questions, kicking roadblocks out of the way, and looking at it holistically. But then, yeah, you're right. Once you talk about a solution to a problem, you really have to go into identifying who those customers, stakeholders, users, use cases um, are, right, Michael? And so there's a couple different types of those, right? We talked about the three different types today.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's great that you've kind of gotten everybody that's there in this hackathon to the what was the idea and then what's the concept of how you're going to solve that problem. So then taking that concept and bringing it forward into the rest of implementing your project. And that's where you're identifying the customer base, which is going to be like, are you creating a product for an end user, like a direct to consumer, business to consumer product? Are you creating a business to business product doing back end services? Or are you doing a business to consumer product, which Bank Social kind of has a little bit of everything in the way
Mhm.
that you've structured the Bank
Well,
Social.
even business to government. I heard B to G this morning from Jake. So Jake
Mhm.
brought up B to G. So business to government, right? I do think
Absolutely.
that's a good differentiating way to think about government because they work a lot differently sometimes than even businesses. They have different
Absolutely.
modalities of working.
And it really just depends on who that end user or the consumer of the service is that you are creating. And you're going to have to do different ways of developing the not only the product but also the customer in doing that. And whether that's Bank Social, you guys have the app in the app store, so like a direct consumer wallet that any retail user could use. And then you've got the business to business backend and the CU embedded wallet. So like with the credit unions onboarding with Bank Social, they're providing their membership and their customers with, an out of the box solution with the Bank Social wallet that they can just plug right into. But then you're also doing the CUSO, the Credit Union Service Organization, for those that haven't heard about that sort of a thing, you're developing solutions for credit unions for all kinds of use cases.
Yeah, and I think when you think about identifying the customer, the reason why this is kind of the next most important step is you start to think about the experience that you're trying to create. Because I was talking earlier to a couple of the teams here about the flow from experience to price. So in the early days of the internet, when the internet, and this is cyclical, so it's I'm just using the internet because it's kind of one of the most recent transitory um, um, transitionary periods. And I think we're mirroring that. So, early internet, like the thing
When
that
you
got you
hear it.
noticed, well, the thing that got you noticed was having a website. So you created a different experience. And then once all companies had websites, then it went to price. Like you started to compete on price. So there's this flow of competing on price versus experience, right? And so if you're first, you're competing on experience. If you're later down the line, you're competing on price, right? And so what we're in right now is we're kind of in this wave of where we hit the top of the cycle on experience. How many Airbnb clones are there? How many banking clones are there? How many this? And now we have this opportunity to bring financial cooperatives, these tools, and compete back on price. We're swinging to a price motivated because there's so many ecosystems that are doing instant lending and instant loans and all this stuff. And so there really is an opportunity to swing this back towards to cooperative finance, right? And that's why things like blockchain and AI, democratizing data, getting data out there, is really going to be. And so in identifying the customer, it's identifying the experience to connect that with the solution and problem that you found. And that's kind of the next big step. And to Michael's point, there's a lot of different ways to do that: B2C, B2B2C, B2B, and then business to government. But yeah, so that's kind of where you start and how you get going. And then really is when you start to, of course, now you start to build your product. You've got a product, you've got it's looking good, it's working, but now you got to take that thing to market, right? And tailoring kind of the experience to the brand, to the focus, to the image of the brand, and pulling in the right consumers, whether those are B2B or B2C, is really where I think a little bit of focus. I don't know, Scotty, I'll bring you back in here for a second because you've done this for a couple of years now. At the end of these hackathons, how many of them look like companies or products that are in a state that could be potentially deliverable to an end user or to a consumer or to a business to business?
I would say so last year for Live AI we had 61 submissions. I would say I felt like there were maybe off the top of my head, I can think of 4 or 5 that I felt like maybe they weren't in that situation, but they were close enough.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, they
something where
started
you might
thinking
say
about it,
growing
right? They
incubator, yeah.
Yeah,
One of
yeah,
those
they
little
started
things.
thinking about it. And so we want to encourage you guys. I think one of the things I was encouraged by is, we helped create like more of a flow of, hey, look, this is what you need to focus on for the first couple hours. Like, what's the minimum viable product, right? What's my solution? What's my minimum viable product? There's a bunch of you can dream about this big thing, but one of the things we talked about yesterday was dream big, start small, right? So think about this big, cool thing that you can build that could be this really great big thing, and then focus on the smallest iteration of that. And what we started getting was we started getting teams that were asking about, okay, now I feel like I've got an MVP with very basic, kind of graphical user interface, some backend stuff going on, some very basic backend stuff. Some of them, more than basic, frankly, more than basic. And so now as you get, and then some of these teams, Scotty and Michael, they'll have kind of a GUI focused person that will get ahead of the GUI, deliver that to the development team, or work in tandem, and then have some time. The team comes up with a name, they come up with a brand, then they come up with something that's more of like a company, right? A name, a physical presence, or a digital presence. And I think that is something that is really cool and would helps these guys think about how to take products to market. And I think where the rubber meets the road on success versus, and success means different things, so I'll qualify what I mean there, but successfully launching a product that others that gets traction and scale. The difference is in the ability to convey the market position. Why you? Why you? Why are you different? What did you do that I need to know about? And how do you get that out in the market? And I think one of the cool things about Converge Accelerator and Bank Social and what we're doing here is providing those opportunities. And we want to inch the kind of inch everybody along. I think we're going to have today probably 5 or 6 products that I think are going to be products, which is incredible. And they're building at just fantastic speed, but it's because of the combination of identifying that problem quickly and the solution quickly, identifying the customer groups and the core users that need to be a part of the ecosystem, targeting and tailoring. Now thinking about how do I go to market with this? What are my core differentiators? What's my core ethos? What's the ethos of this product? Why will people want to use it? Why would they want to use us? That's really what I think the next part of this is about. And the thing I try to tell people all the time is, you know, they get focused too much on the name or the this or the that. It's like just name the thing right now, right? You can always change the name, come up with something creative. I'm not saying don't spend time on it, but if it's not right, that's all right. You can pivot. Right. Some people get too bogged down, but I'm very encouraged because I saw a lot of people, not a lot of people here were getting bogged down and they were moving forward and they were making decisions. Maybe some of it was because we were encouraging it. I'm sure that helped out a lot, right? Moving through the phases of this, but it really is kind of bringing it all together. Um, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here. But we'll talk about some business to business, like some new ways to think about your go-to-market strategy. Because that's another thing is as you're tailoring the marketing, part of marketing is what do things cost, right? What is the go-to-market strategy for a product? And this is where you start bringing in the things that maybe as software engineers, and that's why I think it's good to have a diverse team, right? Because in a diverse team, you get these different people who can focus on different things. That's how you're going to have. I'm noticing here that the most diverse teams are having some of the better outcomes. Which and all the teams here are diverse. Don't get me wrong, and that's why I think we're having such great outcomes is because they're thinking differently. They're working in tandem. They're able to hand stuff off. So Michael, I think, from a bringing it together standpoint, we wanted to talk about just, some go-to-market strategies economically, like how to think about these last few phases of what you're putting together, because we're going to ask these questions tomorrow as judges, right, Scotty? I mean, these are the types of questions I want to know about in addition to, look, because there are definitely use cases for great tech that maybe doesn't have a monetization strategy yet, and it's just some really cool tech that could be plugged into something else. I don't want to discourage that at all, right? But there are also the use cases where, a really great tool or a product can have a few different ways eventually to be utilized to make money. Like I'm pretty sure, and I don't know if I'm wrong about this, I haven't really read anything about, but I know that the early days of Facebook, even though they didn't make money, they knew that there were ways to make money and how they could monetize this later on. They had a grander vision, the big vision, right, of how they can do this. And so that's kind of where we're gonna maybe spend a little bit more time going through because I know this is only 30 minutes and we're coming up on that 30 minute. And I think we want to talk about bringing it together, the use cases, the kind of some new brands who are thinking about things differently. So you can get out of the mindset of the traditional what we've seen and start thinking about what else is exploding around the world. So, Michael, talk to us about some of those Web3 blockchain examples that are, and we'll call them like cooperative corporations. I think is the best way to do it. But yeah, talk real quickly about those examples, Michael, the ones that we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the interesting stuff that you're talking about with the tailoring your marketing portion of this is like if you're going after a specific like retail user, you're building a product for the end user, you're going to be reaching out to directly to the end user, some whether that's going to be like targeted social media campaigns or those like how do you get to directly to the individual versus if you're doing a business to business thing, you're trying to meet the right people to make sure that they understand even the product that you're offering, which is going to be somewhat of a customer education side of things. Like John, with Bank Social and early credit union, conversations and discussions. I mean, going to some of those conferences and talks, I mean, did they even understand what some of this
Well,
stuff was?
no, and that's one of the things. So we want to help these guys hack that, growth hack that, right? So this is one of the things we want to help this community do is growth hack through the traction phase. That's one of the hardest phases of building a company, right? Aside from a hard part of building, or not hard, but complex part of building a company is also the part, or the product is also the part of getting traction with the product. And we want to help growth hack both of those parts. They're already growth hacking the so I think, yes, getting out there, knowing your customers is important, but I like to also think about it like this with Henry Ford. I think some people dispute whether he said this or not, but I know Steve Jobs quoted it, which is if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses in the 1900.
Of
And so you
horses.
have to balance the two of sometimes you've got a vision. When you think big enough, you've got a vision. And the question really becomes is how do you get it out there? How do you, I think focusing on small markets, like a couple of the guys here, we talked about how to do fine insurance, right? Insurability for people, but person to person. And instead of I said trying to do it here in America, focus on a country, go do some research, focus on a country where the regulations were light in insurance, and maybe you can do some DeFi peer-to-peer insurance. And they figured it out. They found in Africa that there are some countries that you could do it in, and now they're building a DeFi peer-to-peer insurance company, right? So I think a lot of times it's about believing in your vision yourself, right? Believing in your vision and understanding that because you can talk to customers, but they're most of them are just going to tell you they want faster horses.
Right, right. No, for sure. But it's getting, yeah, once you've got that vision, how do you make them understand that what you potentially have, what's that unique value proposition for going with yours versus some other thing that exists or, is a faster horse, but there's a magnitude of other things that can bring into it. One of the projects that we've got that we've seen over on the Hedera network and even just Hedera itself. Hedera has retail users as well as a huge, huge enterprise use case with multiple other entities on there. But one of the cool ones that I like um, is Neuron, which Neuron is utilizing antennas to gather aircraft and drone flight data essentially to provide data as a product. And that's where something like helium as well, like for
Well, talk
instance,
about, but hold on
helium.
before you jump to helium, talk about that business model. So let's not just talk about that. Let's talk about the business model there, Michael, of Neuron. So Neuron with those antennas, when you put up an antenna in your house, right? So all those drones that are so close and small and 1 meter by 1 meter, right, or less, when you're tracking it from your house, you create these mesh networks of data. You're reducing the islands. And then you can pay. So Neuron pays the people who put up these antennas from the corporations that pay for the data to aggregate the data. So it's like this new corporate to people directly. That's really kind of how you have to think about the new model, right? Go to Helium, Michael, because I think that's as cool a use case.
It is, and I mean, I had no idea what helium was for the longest time, and then realizing that it's all around us in any kind of major metropolitan area. It's probably there, and people don't even necessarily know it. For instance, like the mesh networks and the remote tracking on things, they're all like small miners and nodes that are essentially helping to simplify data aggregation
Well, no, talk about
of where.
what helium does. Let's talk about helium. Helium basically takes your Wi-Fi at home, you put a router on top of it, and it does LoRaWAN. It broadcasts the LoRaWAN net to everybody a mile and a half away from you, and you create this mesh network. And what's happening in South America right now is they're tying mobile to it. So as you're driving through a neighborhood, you're paying small payments to all these
Helium Mobile's
helium
coming out.
node operators to use their internet as mobile service. So it's really incredible. And now you have a person helping another person directly, right? People are paying it's just like um what's the Uber economy called? The not the share
Gig.
economy, the gig economy, right?
Yeah.
It's like another iteration of the gig economy, right?
Mhm.
And that's how you have to kind of start to think differently about these new types of economic models, economic engines, corporate structures, corporate entities, because companies like Helium, Neuron, Bank Social. So with our DAO, right, Michael, we have something very similar with lending and loans, right? We've democratized the lending and loan process, tokenized it, turned it into a thing where people can lend to other people and other businesses, right, directly. And so it's really cool the way we can rethink and restructure and redo all these things. Like that's what we wanted to make sure we conveyed with this specific. I'll let you have the kind of the last thoughts here, Michael.
No, I mean it's really great to see the advances, and it really is kind of thinking outside the box on what kind of a solution can you create and provide. I mean, take Uber for instance, Airbnb, like they don't own those vehicles, but they found a solution and a way of creating a product that brings all of those items together to solve a problem. People needed a car to get somewhere, people needed a house to stay somewhere. Well, people created a way of creating a solution. And that's I think where these hackathons and these programmers and these new business developers are going to excel in that, the next great business doesn't exist yet and they can come up with it and they can try and find a way of creating a solution for something that people don't even realize is a problem until they see that solution presented to them and go, wow, that's awesome. I want to be a part of this.
Yeah,
So
and and like with the whole the marketing, just one final thought, quick thought here. You, Michael, when you see a product, Uber, for example, you care that when you push a button, something happens and a guy shows up. You don't necessarily care that it works with JavaScript and APIs and it's crazy payment processing. Like that's the difference between a brand and a product that connects. I push the button and a guy shows up, right? And that's the message you convey versus a tech focused, tech heavy, drown yourself in tech kind of marketing because you don't care about that, right, Michael? You're like, well, what does this mean to me? What does it mean? I don't care about that. Neither one of us care about that. So thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today. And we're going to do a live Q&A session after dinner or during dinner. I think we'll air this and then we'll do a live Q&A session for all these teams. So thanks so much. I think we're right about at time, right, Scotty?
Yeah, it was great. Thank you, everyone. Obviously, for those of you watching at Harvard, you're going to have a lot of extra time to ask Johnny any questions you want, especially during dinner. So, it's even better than having a few minutes and then getting
Or
cut off.
should we do a couple here just in case these people's questions
Oh,
are the
yeah.
same kind of
Anyone who's
questions
in the
that
Zoom room, yeah, feel free to ask any questions now. And then, of course, anyone who's watching this later at Harvard, welcome to walk up to John in person and ask some questions.
and we'll
Uh,
do it on the Discord too, right, Scotty? We'll post this on Discord. So if you have any questions, just
Yeah,
ask in the
yeah. So
Discord.
the YouTube, this is also being broadcast to YouTube live. So we're going to post that link into Discord, and everyone's going to have multiple ways to access this.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, this was way better, Scotty. Thanks for pushing on us to get this done this way. This is way better.
Hey, great minds think alike. We're all working together here. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Actually, I do want to point out someone, Olatunde Badmus, who is a fellow classmate from Harvard Business School Online. He's one of our judges at Harvard. Well, he's not at Harvard right now, but he's in Boston to judge at Harvard tomorrow. So, yeah, Olatunde, do you want to come on and say hi real quick, ask a question? Or maybe it's not the most convenient time for him, but we actually just had another person, Wilson Munoz. He's actually one of our judges as well. Wilson, I know you didn't get to see a lot of this going on, but actually, Olatunde is joining from a different device. But yeah, Wilson, I think you can probably at least answer this question very quickly. So this whole fireside chat, we were talking about, kind of the mindset of building
Um,
for the market, all that. So if you want to go and mention something like that, or Olatunde, if you have a question or you want to comment on that, feel free to
I,
hop on.
I I don't have any question. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael. What you guys talked about was really insightful. I'm sorry I had issue with my other laptop, so I just had to join with my phone. I'm presently in Boston now, but I think I'll be in Harvard by I'll be there tomorrow, Berlin. I flew in from Houston. Yeah.
Well,
Thank
that's
you.
where
This
I'm
is really
from.
insightful.
That's where I'm
Oh,
from.
awesome. Awesome. Are
Yeah.
you are you in Boston now?
I am in Boston. I'm at the we'll see each other tomorrow then.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, well, I'll be there tomorrow morning if my flights don't get messed up. So
Your flights are going to be perfect. You're going to be perfect, Scotty, as usual.
funny
Everything
story,
will
last
work out.
year, my flights were even better because I had a 5:15 flight that got canceled, and I thought, I don't have any other options. I'll book 5 o'clock. And I'm thinking that's not gonna work because they told me 5:15 got canceled because there's ice on the runway.
Oh,
And then 5 o'clock took off, and I'm thinking, what? Wasn't there ice on the runway? How is my flight, which is 15 minutes earlier, so it's colder, it's taken off when there's ice on the runway? But it worked. So my main thing is there's always a way to solve the problem. So,
That's right.
definitely.
That's
yeah,
exactly right.
yeah. And then yeah, I guess Wilson, if you want to come on and say something real quick, or Gaurav, anyone, feel free to come on and say something. All right. I guess maybe
Cool.
everyone's pretty satisfied with the session so far. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael. I do think beyond the obvious stuff of this was a great session. Everyone learned a lot. I think this is a great example of how Michael, you mentioned earlier, you're not here to represent the Coast Guard. That's what you do currently, but you're looking for what else to do. There's so many things everyone can do to evolve throughout life. I started off, I did pre-med, pre-law, got into med school with scholarships, and then at the last moment changed directions. And I ended up doing finance for a bit, tech, and then Wilson knows me from my iOS days, and now I'm doing stuff that is related to iOS but not iOS, or related to tech but not exactly tech. It's more tech adjacent. And there's a lot of things you can do. So we encourage everyone, if you're at Harvard, please go and meet John and talk to him. There's so many things you can ask him, and
I think I've talked to everybody here.
we'll talk again. Y'all are about to get Sally's sandwiches. It's a good time to chat, get dinner, and all that. So, yeah, I'm gonna send this YouTube link to Discord. John and Michael, I'll also email it to both of you directly. I'll make sure that Aaron, Eugen, Pranay, and all of them get it, so the event staff at Harvard can play on the big screen for everyone. And yeah, obviously, good luck to everyone. We
I
wish
got
you
a
the
I got a
and
question.
then
I got a question.
sorry, we
So I
got we got
was
to get going all today, but yeah, I appreciate your enthusiasm. So thank you, everyone. We're gonna go ahead
okay.
in this live stream, and we will see you around. And
All
everyone at
right.
home, I will see you tomorrow morning.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.